Welcome to the Voice of Islam. The Voice of Islam is a weekly radio program organized by the Islamic Council of Jamaica, the umbrella organization for the Muslim community in Jamaica, to propagate the message of Islam, dispel the common misconceptions about Islam, and facilitate a medium to provide Islamic perspective on topical issues and alternative solutions. You may contact the Islamic Council of Jamaica at 648-9545. That's 648-9545. You are listening to the Voice of Islam. Before we begin, let's take a few minutes to listen to the recitation of verses selected from the final revelation to mankind, Al-Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا وقودها الناس والحجارة عليها ملائكة غلاظ شداد لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون صدق الله العظيم. I seek refuge in Allah from the shaitan, the outcast. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. O you who believe, save yourselves and your families from a fire whose fuel is men and stones, over which angels are appointed, who are stern and severe, who flinch not from executing the commands they receive from Allah, but do precisely what they are commanded.
You are listening to the Voice of Islam.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All praise and thanks to the one who created us. And I greet you all with a greeting. Ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome to our program today. Session 1, we looked at what are the ingredients of a tranquil family. What are the ingredients of a happy home? Now in today's session promises, bi'idhnillah, by the permission of the Creator, to be a very engaging session. It is actually a panel discussion where we will be looking at these issues, how to approach them. What are the solutions, the importance of creating this level of awareness that domestic violence, child abuse, violence in all circumstances is unacceptable, never acceptable, and it is not tolerated. And in today, we have guests from Trinidad. We have Michelle Bayam, and I'm going to ask her to introduce herself when we bring her onto the panel, because she's a counselor, she's a trainer, she's also a trauma therapist, a family. So she looks at this as something she has been dealing with for years. We also have our own local Dr. Sulaiman Tijani, who he has been working across with hospitals. He has been working with Muslims in Jamaica and in the States. He has worked at several hospitals, children's hospitals, various places. So without any further ado, I'm introducing them, and I'll firstly ask Dr. Tijani to introduce himself, just to give us an idea who he is, his experience, what are his thoughts on domestic violence, and then I'll ask Michelle Bayam. So Dr. Tijani, I'll ask you to go, and then our trauma therapist, Michelle Bayam, I'll ask to go next.
You are listening to the Voice of Islam.
Naam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Greetings, welcome to everyone, and thank you for joining us for a discussion that we all know its significance and its importance, and just for it to be highlighted in these past series is of critical importance. As many persons know, I graduated from the University of the West Indies in 2010. And then thereafter, I was at Kingston Public Hospital, Bustamante Children's Hospital, Victoria Jubilee, and then afterwards I moved to National Chest Hospital, and we did mostly thoracic-related cases as it relates to surgery. And thereafter, I've been doing further training in the in the United States. And I was at a hospital that dealt with a good degree of domestic related illnesses and violence as well. And so, inshallah, the aim, God's willing, the aim of the discussion will be to try to highlight some of these. What are the downstream effects that we see, especially from the medical side as well? And then also, what are the effects onto not just the individuals, but their families and friends, and just how we kind of all ties together. So looking forward to a discussion and hearing also from the other panelists, and from also questions and thoughts from those who will be listening on, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Naam. So we'll ask now Michelle Bayam. I mean, her resume is so fantastic, but I'll ask you to introduce yourself to us. Welcome again to our program.
Pleasant good afternoon to everyone. I'm Michelle Bayam. I'm a family and trauma therapist. My training started in the UK and then on to the US for the actual trauma therapy qualification. So I have been dealing with trauma for a few years now, many years, and even longer in the field of domestic violence. So when I returned to Trinidad after my first degree in the UK, one of the main projects that I did was actually delivering therapy services for shelter for women and children of domestic violence. And I did that for a good 10 years. So, and other homes as well for children with family difficulties, adoption situations, etc. So I've been in it for quite some time. And my vision is always to deliver information in a practical manner that the average person can use, because we need to see change in this area. So I'm looking forward to the discussion and the questions, and just say that it's a pleasure to be able to share with everyone today.
Thank you. So just a quick question to you, Dr. Tijani. I'd like to ask you a question. In terms of your experience, you said you've worked at children's hospitals, you've worked with adults, you've looked at the chest itself. I have a quick question for you. What's your experience in terms of injuries that come in? What sort of proportion or percentage, or what's the magnitude in terms of them being related to abuse or domestic violence or incidents of the home?
Now, when we look at this, the whole issue of domestic violence, and I think Mrs. Bayam will perfectly chime in as well. A lot of time, by the time persons get to the hospital, we are seeing the extreme end of it. We're seeing a buildup. We're seeing somebody who probably was reaching out and saying and asking for help, but maybe that help didn't come in time, and they were suffering, oftentimes in silence, oftentimes within the presence of neighbors and friends, and sometimes, unfortunately, families, right? And so what we end up seeing is that by the time they show up to the emergency room, they have what we call fresh wounds, and then they have old wounds. They have signs that indicate to us that, this is somebody who has been going through. So they'll probably have maybe, fractures to their rib or their chest wall that when you talk to them, you'd realize that this isn't something that happened, maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago. This is a fracture that happened, weeks ago, and it's starting to heal. They'll have bruises on their arm, bruises under their eyes. And as you're trying to take the history, then, or, essentially when these patients come in, one of our first thing is there's no assumption made, right? So we're going to be asking them questions without any bias, any assumption, but in the back of your head, as a physician, and whether it is that is the emergency room physician that's talking to them, whether it is that is the pediatrician that is speaking to them, everybody, your training suggests that you must always, when the story doesn't add up, always be thinking, could I be dealing with a domestic violence situation here? And so what you'll find is that the story just doesn't add up. They'll tell you, oh no, this happened when I fell. This was I ran into like a wall, and you're like, wait, you ran into a wall? But so how did that happen? And then the nature of the fracture, where it is happening, and under the side, and then it happens on the buttock, and it is a cut down the leg, and so you starting piecing things together. And so number one is always that they come with varying intensities. Number two is that they're coming to us after months, unfortunately, of injury. And then lastly is that we're also seeing a lot of times the physical effects but the psychological effects is often missed, right? The trauma that they have gone through, that's what's often missed, and that's what it takes a lot of time, because then there is issues as it relates to confidence with the medical practitioner. Maybe the person has threatened them if you ever say something to anybody, you see, man. So they don't even have trust. So there's a trust issue, there's a confidence issue, there's issue in relation to maybe they did reach out and nothing came out of it, and they have to go right back into the situation again. So there's so many layers to unfold, and so it becomes there are the visible wounds, but the most painful ones are the ones that are not so visible. So I'd like to kind of start it there.
You are listening to the Voice of Islam.
Okay, thanks a lot. And I'd like, of course, Mrs. Bayam to chime in a little bit on it, as the doctor had mentioned. How real is this issue? And from your experience, I mean, I just want you to give us an idea. How real is this issue, and how important is awareness? I mean, is this something that is probably not really something that is big, but yes, important, or is it a major problem?
Oh, it's major. It's major. And I wanted to thank the doctor for mentioning that, because by the time they end up at hospital, that is literally the end, where they can't take anymore and they must go in. So there were many wounds that healed at home, healed by itself. You realize, okay, they're not going to go to the hospital. They're going to let this heal at home. They're going to try and tie it up themselves. They're going to band up. And of course, in your community where a lot is covered, that is done so much, we don't even realize how much of that is going on. And we're having conversations with people face to face, and we don't know that's what's happening. Because the smile, the face is always there. You understand? I mean, I am a Christian, but in our community, it's the same thing. You know, it's the same thing. And even outside of any faith, it's also the same thing. So it really does level all of us as human beings. So it is prevalent. We have a lot of work to do. And as Dr. Tajani, I hope I'm saying it right, was saying, by the time they reach hospital, it's just because the body cannot heal anything on its own again, and they can't take anymore. Back to you.
We actually have another panelist coming on, and we have a very few minutes left. So we're going to find how we're going to look at how exactly we are going to address this. We want to use the last few minutes to addressing this issue, and then, of course, possibly seeing how we're going to continue it. So, for example, now we have actually, there is Dr. Elizabeth Ward was actually joined us. She is, I mean, well resumed, I must say, and I must say welcome. We are so happy you have joined us, Dr. Ward. And I know you are part of the Violence Prevention Alliance. So I'd like for you to just chime in a little bit and tell us how important it is for us to create this awareness, and how deep is this issue? How deep is this issue of violence in general, domestic violence, child abuse? How deep is this issue?
Really, it's a pleasure to be here, and congratulate the group for doing this work, and hope to see you continuing it. It is common. 1 in 4 women in Jamaica experience, intimate partner violence, and violence against women is there. 1 in 5 of girls have experienced sexual abuse, and often it's done by friends. It's somebody in the family. And then children grow up with a lot of abuse. So they see the abuse, they experience the abuse, and often are very traumatized. So we have those issues to really work on, and we have to understand what the data is saying. I'm an epidemiologist, so I always start with data. But also not only looking at the data, but what works and what doesn't work, because there are programs that we do know that help, but others that don't. One of the things just to mention a few points, because I'd let you go back to wrapping up, is I just like to mention 7 things. You need to know the data, and you have to share it. You need to make sure whoever's providing the services are providing hospitality and not hostility. In Jamaica, there was a lot of saying that that's man woman business, go home and sort it out. You know, this sort of they're not listening to hear the cries of the women, or even sometimes the men or the young boys or girls that are there. We have to make sure our providers are properly trained and that people get the services that they need. With the third thing is that we need to remember we all have wings. It takes both male and female. So we can't treat and fix one wing and expect the flight to occur. You have to work on both wings. So it is something that we have to engage both male and female. And how many of us do have spaces for treating males, for allowing males to share and to be vulnerable and get treatment if it's needed. So the other thing, it must be multi-sectorial. What I like about your group is that you have brought many different stakeholders together. This is very important. And you need sociologists, anthropologists, politicians. Everybody has to get involved. Young people, youth clubs, older people's clubs. It has to be multi-sectorial and that. All of us, another point or 6th point is that you have to respect yourself. Don't put up with violence because, oh, it's my fault. It's I'm guilty. I'm wrong. I deserve this punishment. We all have to respect ourselves and know that we are not to be in this situation. And as the earlier panelists were saying, get help, but get the right kind of help and get it early for everybody involved. And the different religions all need to come together, because one of the factors that does lead to some of this violence is interreligious violence. So we need to do that. But my last one is that, you know, it's all preventable, but we really have to work on these areas: the data, the hospitality of providing our services, the support for effective programs that work, that we realize that it's a situation that where people need to have wings, both male and female have to be involved. It's multi-sectorial. We have to respect ourselves and respect others, and it's everybody's business, and it is a preventable situation. So I thank you again, and I really congratulate you for what you've been doing.
Wonderful, and we truly appreciate your input. This is really fantastic.
You are listening to the Voice of Islam.
I'd like to get a final comment, and the final question that I will like to ask Mrs. Bayam. Basically, in terms of your experience, what would be your words of advice in terms of, I don't know if it's training, or you're a counselor, you do training. What are your words of advice, a few words of advice in terms of how to really tackle this issue, but tackling it in a way that's not just a one-shot, a one-go issue, but to ensure that it is something where we can end up with a particular solution? What are some pointers that you would give us?
You are listening to the Voice of Islam.
Certainly what was coming to mind as Dr. Tijani was speaking is that I wanted to put out there for the male leaders to just go deeper into the issue. One of the things that men have in common, even though they agree that it shouldn't be taking place, that it's wrong, even though they may agree that whatever those external behaviors are, it shouldn't be done. But that doesn't give room for abuse. It doesn't cause you to say, well, okay, I could see, you know. But one of the things that all male supporters have in common is that dislike and low tolerance for distress, for the distasteful. So typically what would happen if both appear. So let's say the perpetrator does agree and they come together. One of the earliest things that the guys do is to make a statement of admission and say they're going to try better. They're going to try to be better. Now, the facilitating male, the helper, the supporter, is like, oh, okay, insight, that's good. And now that we have an admission, over to you. And within the first 5 minutes of that scenario, the focus is then placed again on the victim, because he already admitted, he admitted and he's made a promise. So that tendency to push aside the distasteful is there common. And we are the ones, the females will say, okay, that's good, that's good. And what I want to encourage the male supporters to do is to applaud the statement, but still go deeper. You've got to go deeper. Because what would happen is that they would say, well, why you pushing? He's already admitted, he's already saying that he would. No, that is like smoke and mirrors, right? And that victim is going to feel very defeated in that session and she will not come back. So what I want to encourage the male supporters is that, yes, you too have a low tolerance for displeasure, for distasteful, for the uncomfortable, but persist, go beyond that initial summary admission and get into it. And then you will see what the real situation is, because as you make him uncomfortable, you will see certain behaviors rising up as well. The other thing I want to put out there, because time is short, there's so much I want to share. And I want to thank you guys for this such a well-organized session, very well managed. But the second thing I want to put out there is that from the victim's point of view, if you realize that you've tried some things and you've come to a point where, okay, I've got to do something, the first thing you do is to get a support system in place, an anonymous support system, where the different needs that you have, you get support in different places anonymously. So for example, if you have children, find somebody who can take the children to school, find somebody who can get their books, find somebody who can top up your phone, find somebody who can do food. When they're shopping, they can get you groceries and stuff like that in different people anonymously. And why that is important is because the first challenge when somebody flees from that situation is endurance, living. And because they cannot live, it's harder for them to see, especially if there are children with them, see their children suffer out of school, hungry, this, that. And you break down and you go back. And many times the perpetrators just wait because they know you don't have a dime to your name. So it means now that the first thing, before you run, before you announce, before you start to resist, get a support system anonymously set up so that there is no one person, because we have a lot of kind-hearted people out there who are willing to help, but they can't take pressure, they can't take disrespect. And I'm telling you, when that perpetrator wants that person back, they will disrespect from grandmother to newborn, they don't care. And the aim is to get everybody to release you and say, listen, I don't want to have anything to do with that. So before anything else, support system anonymously. Okay, back to you.
Perfect. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You are listening to the Voice of Islam.
So one of the things I know I dropped out because of time, but I really want to get another minute in with Dr. Ward, is based on what she said, I think we know she has some level of experience. But I'd like us to give us a minute, probably 90 seconds before I wrap up, in terms of her work specifically with the Violence Prevention Alliance. So I didn't give you a proper introduction, Dr. Ward. So I'd like for you to give me just to quickly introduce us in a minute or so. What work are you doing with the Violence Prevention Alliance?
What I think we have to work and to have linkages. That's why we are an alliance. And each of us bring to the table a different set of skills and understanding, and we work with the data and what works. But we do have to strengthen our ability in our young people to build effective, positive relationships, especially during this time of COVID, where things have become very inanimate and very isolated. So we have to learn how to settle differences, how to deal with their emotions, and to make sure that our systems are in place to see when it breaks down that we effectively respond together.
Appreciate it, Dr. Ward. Really appreciate it with the panelists. So I must thank the viewers. I must thank Dr. Ward. I must thank Mrs. Bayam. I must thank Dr. Tijani. You have all done a very good representation of this issue. We would like to end and say domestic violence, child abuse, every form of violence, it is unacceptable, and we must all play our part in eradicating this disease. So it is important to build good units, good relationships, healthy relationships, understand problems, try to solve problems in a very cohesive manner, and to know and acknowledge the issue and not just sweep it under the rug. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you all for listening to The Voice of Islam, a weekly radio program organized by the Islamic Council of Jamaica to propagate the message of Islam, dispel the common misconceptions about Islam, and facilitate a medium to provide Islamic perspective on topical issues and alternative solutions. Remember, you may collect a free Quran, yes, a free Quran, by emailing us, sending a text message, or visiting any of our locations. Please send in your questions and comments to islamradiojm@gmail.com. That's islamradiojm@gmail.com, or by text message to 892-1350. That's 892-1350. You may also visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/Islamic Council of Jamaica, or find us on Instagram at ICOJ_official, or you may listen to a past episode on our YouTube channel, Islamic Council of Jamaica. You may also visit any of the following locations: Islamic Council of Jamaica, 24 Camp Road, Kingston 4. Masjid Al-Aziz, Portmore Central Plaza, West Tradeway, Portmore. Masjid Al-Rahman, Windsor Road, Spanish Town. Islamic Dawah Center, 1 Makati Street, Montego Bay. Masjid Al-Hakim, 138 Main Street, Ocherios. Masjid Al-Sabr, Albany, St. Mary. Masjid Hussein, 3 Miles River, Westmoreland. Masjid Al-Haq, New Green Road, Mandeville. Masjid Al-Nur, Port Maria, St. Mary. Masjid Al-Ihsan, West End Road, Negril. Masjid Al-Taqwa, Newell, St. Elizabeth. Masjid Ibrahim, Riversdale, St. Catherine. Masjid Al-Sakina, 26 Miriam Way, Montego Bay. Peace be upon you all. Assalamu alaikum.